Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to Meet the Prof. I am Shane Hartley, and I'm so glad you joined us now. This is the podcast where we interview Christian professors, and we use questions we get from college students, and our goal is to encourage Christ-centered conversations on the college campus. So if you would remember, please, to click on subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. It doesn't cost anything. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, to click follow. And we have the privilege now of getting to know Lanny Griffin. Lanny has been a professor for almost 30 years at Cal Poly. And so, Lanny, thanks so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
Great.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this. Can you give sort of an explanation, introduction to your career, where you've been and what you are doing now?
Well, you might call me the reluctant professor. I didn't start off with a view towards becoming a professor at any particular point. It was more because God directed it. My senior year of being at Cal Poly as a mechanical engineering student, God sort of laid in my heart the desire to become a professor. I don't know why. I bounced the idea off a couple of friends who I trusted, and they said, well, if you feel like God's doing it, I think you'd be good at it. So I pulled on that thread for a while, and then I was working for a year at a company in Santa Barbara doing design, 2 blocks from the beach, nice place. I put one application into grad school and basically told them, if you're the only place I'm applying, and I would love to come to your school and study engineering at your school. I don't have any money to pay for it, so if you want me to come, you'll have to pay for me to come because I'm living 2 blocks from the beach, so I don't really.
You were making it hard on them. They had to really want you.
Anyway, they said, sure. I went up and interviewed with them, and we both liked what the other person was doing. And so God opened the door. Like I say, I was one application at UC Davis. And so I just felt like that was what God was calling me to. I wasn't married at the time, so I thought, okay, I can just pick up and move. Went up there and started my graduate career at Davis. That year, God brought a woman into my life, and somebody I'd known for years, but really hadn't had much. We mutually didn't have a lot of interest in one another. We liked each other. We were both believers. It wasn't one of those things that we said, "Oh, this is the person for me." We just started the relationship, and then within a year we were married. And so my wife of 31 years has been with me.
Congratulations.
And, so wow. It's been wonderful. And so she spent 2 years enduring the life of poverty as a grad student. So she went from a pretty well-paying job to come in. I'll extol the values of poverty as a college student.
It was true love, wasn't it?
It was true love. True love.
I know what you're referring to. Princess Bride, for listeners that don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'd say this about Dorinda, too, that it sounds like both of us married up, me and you, because for me and other buddies, I say, we definitely married up in life.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. She's most definitely the A side. I'm the B side.
That's funny. Well, so I'd love to go backwards to on meettheprof.com. You shared some of how you came to Christ and started growing in Christ, and it evolved you hearing Billy Graham. I imagine on TV or on the radio. But I was wondering if you could tell me what you remember feeling during that, what really resonated for you, because you were a non-believer, you listened to Billy Graham, and that was a turning point for you believing in Christ. So what was happening then?
Well, let me give you I'm going to back up about 2 or 3 steps prior to that, because I didn't grow up in a Christian home. And I was, absolutely, this verse would be, you did not seek me. I didn't seek God. I don't know how, I don't know why God decided to pick me, because there was no point where I said, I'm going to search for the truth. That was not me. I was reluctantly dragged to church on Wednesday at college my first year of college by my friend who wanted to take me to college to church. And we would go to church, and then afterwards we'd go to the bars and drink till we were completely stupid. And
Is that right?
that was my experience with church. Well, somebody later on during that time on the Wednesday came up after us and said, "Would you guys like to go to Bible study?" And I said, "Sure." My friend goes, "No, no, no, we're going to church on Wednesdays. We're good. That's what we need. We need church on Wednesdays." And so I said, "Oh, I guess that's Christianity." So that was my experience with Christianity. I was in Army Reserve at this point. So I had about 2 years of Army Reserve. And after my first year of college, I just felt like I'm wasting my parents' money. They can't really, they're paying for me to come here, but I can't stay here. I'm wasting their money, and I'm not. So I said, I'm just going to join the Army, go active duty in the Army, and just kind of figure my life out. My mom was not too happy, was not too happy about this. Said, "I'll pay for your, you can go to college here." I said, "No, this is,
Oh,
I'm already in the Army. I'm just going to go active duty. I'll figure it out." So while I'm waiting to go on active duty, I couldn't find a job. This is back in '82. I was having trouble finding a job. I had the skills. I mean, I could drive heavy equipment for heavy construction equipment. I was quite good at it, but there just weren't any jobs. So apparently God was saying, no, if you get this job, it'll be a distraction. You're going to just suffer. Just be
huh,
alone. So I was
really?
I'm asking myself, what in the world am I doing with my life? Why
Mm,
am I doing this? I have no hope. I have no job. I can't do anything. I'm a loser. We just going fishing and drinking till
mm,
so it wasn't anything. So anyway, I was driving down the street in the main street in Boise, Idaho, and I saw this billboard that said Billy Graham Crusade on TV. So I said, "Okay, I'm going to watch that." I don't know why. Somehow Billy Graham, for whatever reason, I don't know if I've even heard of him, but somehow I've said, this guy knows what he's talking about. This guy's got some. So I didn't. The crusade was actually in Boise, but there was no way I was going to go to that. But it was televised,
mm,
so I went ahead and watched it on TV. And as he's doing the crusade, I don't really remember too much of what he said. His message is pretty clear, but it was, you're a sinner and God really wants to take care of that. Jesus died. And so people were coming down as he made his invitation. He said, for those of you out there, you're seeing people come down and respond. You can respond too. If this message spoke to you, call that number on the bottom of the screen. So I wrote it down. I said, I'm going to call the number. So I run over the phone and I called and I said, and she said, "Well, what would you like? What can I help you with?" I said, "Well, I was watching the crusade, the Billy Graham crusade, and he said, if this message spoke to you, call the number. I want to do what he said." And she said, "Well, what was that?" And I said, "Oh, something about Christ and things." So she shared the gospel with me.
over
And
the
then
phone.
over the phone, she goes, "Is that what you want?" I said, "Yes, that is. I want to receive Christ as my savior."
Wow.
And
How old were you then?
I was about 20, 18. No, I was what, 20?
Uh-huh.
About 20.
Okay.
And
Wow.
so I said, that's what I want to do. So I did feel a sense of relief and like, okay, I finally did something that was good. But I didn't, what do you do? I mean, my experience with Christianity was go to church on Wednesdays and then go to do whatever you want. That's all you have to go to do. And I said, it's got to be more to it than that. So they sent a follow-up material, go to church, read your Bible, pray, find fellowship. And so I got that before I went to active duty. And then I started trying to do those things, but it didn't really take. I mean, like a little chicken that pops out of the egg and said, "I'm here. What do I do now?" And I didn't have anybody to help me along the way. So I'm trying to struggle to figure it out. And then it didn't really take. So about 6 or 8 months later, I'm in Hawaii at my first duty station, just walking across the quad and on a Thursday evening, and these guys had Bibles underneath. They were playing hacky sack, had Bibles next to them. And I knew there was Bible. I mean, what else is going to be a big book like this? That's got to be a Bible.
Right.
So I walked over to them and said, what you guys doing? And they said, "Oh, we're playing hacky sack." I said, "Oh yeah." They said, "You want to play?" I said, "Sure." I said, "Where are you guys going after this?" They said, "Oh, we're going to Bible study." I said, "Can I go?" And they said, "Oh, yeah." I'm probably thinking, "Ooh, didn't have to convince him at all." But I'm thinking to myself,
You were asking.
I was asking, and I asked about a Bible study. That seed was dropped a year and a half prior to that by that guy who asked me in college, "Do you want to go to Bible study?" And I said, "Yeah." My friend says, "No," but I said, "I kind of want to go." And so this is, that God dropped that
Just like
seed.
redeeming. You
God
can go
dropped that
back.
seed. This is God leading to a person who had absolutely no interest in Christianity or following God. God sought me. And I still, to this day, I say, why? Why would you do that?
Mm,
I mean, I didn't, I certainly wasn't one of those people who said, I'm going to follow every little detail. I'm going to, peel back all these layers. I'm going to do my research and I'm going to, I didn't, that wasn't me. My story was I didn't seek for God. God sought for me. To this day, I marvel and say, why would you do that? So anyway,
yeah.
I got involved with the Navigator ministry through these guys. My brother had become a Christian at the time, and he said, "You got to be involved with the Navigators." He was involved with the Navigators at Boise State. So I asked the guys, well, the book says Navigators, but I'll just ask. So it turns out they were. They actually did help me. They came alongside and helped me to grow in my faith. They taught me what it means to walk with Christ. And that's the kind of thing that people need. It's one thing to share the gospel with somebody and help them to come to Christ and see Christ. But it's also it's a more important responsibility to take the time after the person has come to know Christ to follow up with them so that they can know how to walk with Christ and to um, allow Him to teach you and to follow Him and to learn what pleases the Lord. And so I had nobody to do that, but the Navigators came alongside. So that's one of the things that I have tried to do over the years as I get to know people is try to see where they're at and as imperfectly as I may do it, so let's figure
Right.
out how to walk with the Lord and count for Him because it's a journey with people. It's not a solo thing.
Yeah. What was your journey like then spiritually when you were a professor? Like, how did you see God building your faith early in your early years as you were teaching, and how did you grow?
Well, as a new professor here, I was involved heavily in my church, but I think I had like a couple pot thing, a couple pot faith. Okay, my work thing is over here, and my spiritual thing is here. Hear about all the things, and I think some of it is probably just bias. I hear about people who say, "Oh, um, professors don't really believe in Christ. They're very skeptical. That if you're really spiritual, if you're really smart, you don't really think about Christianity. You certainly wouldn't believe the Bible is true, and that we have a God who actually cares about how we live, and that there actually is a place where evil forces, world forces, are at work. That's just nobody believes that is in academia. So I sort of bought into that, and it's like, okay, I'm just going to kind of keep my head down and do my work well. And if somebody asks me about how things are going, maybe I'll talk to them about it. But I'm not going to offer up anything. And consequently, I sort of siloed myself. And I'm kind of wondering, are there any Christians here at Cal Poly? Is there anybody here who actually does want to follow the Lord? Or is it just me? It's sort of like the Elijah syndrome. And it's like, Elijah, what are you talking about? I got 7,000 people out here.
Yeah. He
Just
said he was
open
alone.
your eyes. And I'm thinking, you mean there's more than just me? Of course there are. I've got people everywhere. And it's like, oh. So it took a long time before I actually found people at Cal Poly who are on faculty who really want to walk
Yeah.
with Jesus. And I thank God that He brought people like that into my life. That came
Yeah.
about mostly through faculty commons. it helped me to realize, oh wow, there are people here who really do love Jesus, who want to, and so it's helped me over the years to kind of say, I can do this. I can actually talk to people about Jesus. So I've been progressively over the last probably 10 years, I've become more vocal about my faith and talking to faculty and students both about my faith. It's interesting, as a reserve officer, I spent a good deal of my career at West Point teaching as a faculty as a reserve officer. And every time I would go out there, I would make a point to be involved and to say, well, are there any Christians here? So I'm very vocal about saying, okay, we're at the military academy. There's got to be Christians here. There's military people
Yeah.
love Jesus because that's been my experience, military. So I always found people who were involved at the faculty. And to this day, I still keep in touch with many of those, both cadets that have become officers and gone on to careers, and as well as
Yeah.
faculty who have been there or retired. And it's just that
Yeah.
has been an extremely powerful time in my life. But that was I made a point to be very vocal about and intentional about trying to be involved in people's lives at their I kept asking myself, well, why don't I do that back at Cal Poly? That's where my school is. Why can't I do that there? It's like, duh.
We can compartmentalize. So, Lanny, I had a professor that it was just 2 weeks ago. A professor was telling me how she came to one of our Christian faculty luncheons on our campus. They're just once a month, and came out of it saying, I've known that there had to be other Christians on campus who are faculty, but just seeing the other Christian faculty here just really encourages me, because I can feel like I'm alone out there. So I appreciate you sharing how, sometimes it might take some initiative to go and find other Christian faculty. Are there other things that either helped you connect with Christian faculty, or you've seen work in helping others?
Well, over the years, one thing that our faculty commons group does is each year we go out to the new faculty and we bring a welcome bag, coffee cup, and they just introduce ourselves as being part of faculty commons. There's a goodie bag, there's coffee cup, there's different treats. There's some information about who Christian faculty are, what faculty commons is, and as we pass those bags out, I started thinking to myself, well, this is an opportunity just to follow up and see how So everybody wants to talk about the little welcome bag. They say, why are you here? It's like, oh, they're very grateful to receive the welcome bag, and so
Is there any story that stands out of a professor who was really encouraged to get a welcome bag like that?
well, several. Just this last year, I had we have one thing I've noticed over the years, and David and Molly have both made, said, well, we've got so many, we've got
Zach Rodney?
yes, of course, half of the faculty appear to be from outside the country. They're not U.S. citizens. They're either from India or China or some Middle Eastern country. And he says, I said, God is bringing the world to us. So we don't have to necessarily go to other countries to evangelize the world. God is literally bringing the world to our doorstep. And so I've said, this is an opportunity. I've had a couple faculty who are in other departments who are Korean. And I took my welcome bag over to him, and he said, wow, this is so wonderful. Thank you so much for this. And then he said, well, then about a week or so later, he came by with a gift for me. He
No.
said, thank you so much for bringing this. So it was, and so, we've developed a friendship, and
Oh.
we go out for coffee every now and then.
Wow, I've never heard of that happening, but do you think there's sort of that's a cultural
I
thing
think it,
too, to return a gift?
I think
That's beautiful.
especially in the Korean, and I think also the other Asian cultures, it's very common to if you give a gift, they bring a gift. Uh,
Yeah.
sort of very Solomon like. when the Queen of Sheba comes, she brings this big gift, and he outgave her his gift. I go,
Yes.
you gave me yours, I'll give you mine. So I think it's an Asian thing,
Mm,
and I think one thing that's been really encouraging here is we've had over the years, I was department chair for many years, like 6 years or so there. And during that time, we had hired some faculty, and one of them was the, from India, really wonderful guy. But over time, he felt alone. He didn't feel like he had his group of people at our school. So, consequently, he said, I'm going to move on to another school and where I can find my people. And I thought, well, that's kind of
mm,
sad. So I've been trying to reach out to people, to lecturers in our department, and say, I know that one of them's from India, the other is from another place. But I said, sometimes the lecturers might feel unappreciated. I said, I'm going to reach out and try to make them feel welcome. So my wife and I invited them over, had dinner with them, and uh,
really?
yeah, and so we've tried to make
What
them
was
feel.
that like?
It was wonderful. I mean, they both appreciated just coming over and having dinner. And they're not believers, but they will
Yeah.
certainly talk with me about Christianity. We go out for coffee at quite a bit actually now. I've had times when one of the lecturers he'll start sharing things on a more personal level, and then I'll pray for him, and then a couple of weeks later he'll say, "Thank you so much for praying for me. I listened, and here's what happened as a result of the issue."
Wow.
And it's just, it doesn't take that much. Most of it is just, let's go have coffee. And I've
Mm,
actually had one thing
mhm.
that's been really interesting. I have a student who's involved. I'm doing a little bit of ministry with this student here, and he asked me to go and talk to his professor about 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 Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he
What
said,
happened?
well, so I tried to follow up, and it's like, well, I didn't. And finally, I said, okay, let me just make a point to do it right after. I could have some time right now. A couple of weeks ago, I said, let me just make a point. So I said, I got time right now. It's after department meetings. I just said, I'm going to just go up there and see if I can find him. I walked in and knocked on his door. It turns out the same student who said, could you meet with this professor? He was in the office. And I said, hey, and so I introduced myself, and then he says, well, what can I do for you? I said, well, I'm one of the faculty in the department. There's a lot of things I'd like to share, but I can't. I'd rather just, can we maybe just make a time to have coffee, and then we'll go talk later? So, you know, I did.
Yeah.
He was,
Did y'all get together yet?
we did. And, it's been good. I think we've found we have a lot of common ground. Another faculty, I don't even know the faculty. I had no connection with him at all. I just saw his office door open, and another department knocked on his door and said, hey, see, you've got these tensegrity models here. I know what that is. We use it in biomechanics for modeling cellular structure. And so we developed a connection. And then, after talking with him for a while, he said, can we do coffee? So he offered, and we went and had coffee a couple weeks later.
So he initiated it. How'd that go when you had coffee? Did y'all get into spiritual things?
We did. And afterwards, I actually had to cut the thing off. I said, I really have to go to a meeting. He says, thank you so much for taking the time to meet. He says, I've been here for about 3 years, and nobody in my own department has actually asked me to do anything like this. So I said, I really appreciate that somebody from another department just came over.
Yeah. Is he an international faculty also?
No, he's not. He's not.
That's great.
But he just was happy to spend some
Still
time.
had a felt need for connection like that.
Yeah. And so, there's times that, we still meet for coffee, and, I'm getting to the point where I don't have to invite faculty to coffee more often than not. I'm starting to get more applicated, more times when faculty say, can we get coffee sometime? It's like, yeah, let's do that.
How is that happening? How do they know you're available for that?
Well, because I think it's because I've invited them for coffee so many times. So it's, there was an old
They know you're
Saturday Night Live skit that was called Coffee Talk, where you get together and have coffee and talk.
That seems familiar. I'm thinking about the copy machine guy. That's different, isn't it?
I think so. It's just coffee
I'll
talk.
have to look up coffee talk then.
Coffee talk, yeah. So we get together, we have coffee and talk. But I started to
That's
say,
pretty good for a California guy. That was a good accent there.
oh,
Good Boston accent.
so anyway, but I would do this. But I started doing this when I was at West Point because it's like there's a little coffee shop right there at just 5 minutes from our building. I would just stop in various faculty's office. Say, hey, you want to take a few minutes to go have coffee and just chat? Always. People, they're really busy there because they have many schedules. They said, I can't do it now, but I would love to. Let's set it. Let's make a calendar event and we'll set a time. So people always enjoy it. It's very disarming. I could talk to them pretty much about anything. And they just liked not having to go. And, there wasn't any pretense. It's just, come out here and just, what you're struggling with. And they would share, I would share, and it just was really good. I felt a lot of it's social, and I like the aspect of social and relational types of things. Dinner, coffee, these are things that are just very disarming for people. I don't go out I don't drink beer or things, so I can't go to the bars and things like that. It's not that I have aversions to this. I have a background where my parents were alcoholics, and I have
Uh,
a lot of bad experiences with alcohol in my own life. So for me, it's like
yeah.
I'm just not going to do that. Other people say, "Let's have a drink." Like I can't do that, but I have
Well, you're
coffee.
sort of blowing my mind and my stereotypes of a mechanical engineer because I would tend to think of engineers being more introverted, and you are
Well,
initiating constantly with people to go have coffee. That's a very extroverted type behavior there.
okay,
Is
yeah.
that something you feel like you learned over time? Is this just part of who you are? Have you always enjoyed?
I would say this: I am quite introverted. I am quite introverted. But what I've found over the years is that in order to meet with people, I have to get outside myself. Like when I go to a church, I have no expectation that anybody is going to greet me at a church. I just don't. And most often that's true. So I found if I want to be part of the group, I actually have to introduce myself. And so it is funny because, I am, as an introvert, I wind up in front of people every day. And sometimes I can be in front of 200 or 300 people. And it's like, okay, I can't be introverted here. I have to adapt. So God just has worked on me to say, okay, you need to get outside yourself. You just have to take some initiative. And if you want to be lonely, you can be lonely without having to do too much effort. But if you want to get involved and be involved with people, you're going to have to make an effort to reach outside yourself. And God is continually reaching out to us. I mean, I marvel at some of the accounts where God is reaching out to us. I think particularly of Jonah, where God has a desire to use Jonah to reach out to the Ninevite people that he's concerned about. Jonah has no interest in that. So Jonah goes the opposite direction.
Yeah.
God eventually brings him back. And then when
Mm.
Jonah is used of God to accomplish God's work, Jonah's upset with God for doing that.
Right.
But God keeps reaching out not only to the people of Nineveh, he reached out to Jonah and pursued Jonah, even though he kept saying, come on, Jonah, let's talk about that. It reminds me a lot of the prodigal son, where the father keeps reaching out to the younger, he reaches out to the older son. Yeah, we have to do this. And the books end up basically, the prodigal son and Jonah end up basically the same. We never know if the older son comes back to is reconciled to the father.
Mm.
Really know if whether Jonah's really comes to peace with God. But I just marvel that God continues to reach out to people. So I think over the years, God's just helped me to say, look, I got to reach out to people. I care about them. So you got to care about them too. And you have to get outside yourself and just be comfortable enough to say, you can do this. You can do this. It really is not that hard. And if it's just one-on-one, that's a little more, that's a little less disarming than just, and
Going to
say,
a
let's
party.
do the let's go out there and speak in front of 50 people. I
Yeah.
don't want to do that. I can have coffee with somebody.
I love that. Yeah, that's very inspiring. I love those biblical examples too.
Yeah.
What about the student? You said that you have done some ministry with the student. What have y'all done?
So over the years, our church has a lot of what they call growth groups, sermon-based types of studies, where the church's vision is to use those groups as a means to disciple people. And we've tried to do that with some modest degree of success. But it never seems to take. So what I started saying is, well, this doesn't seem to be our thing. But I had some students ask me if I would do Bible study with them. So
Really?
I,
They're
I
in your
got
church? The
well,
students are?
they're actually, go to our church and they go to the college group at church. So I started saying, and I've been involved with them through discipleship types of things, of mentoring. And so I said, look, here's what I'd like to do. Because they would say, can we read a book? I said, I don't really have a desire to read a book, but what I would do is how about if we go into the Bible and we will do a study of shorter books of the Bible. So the first time we did this, it was about a year ago in the winter quarter. I said, let's do, the one chapter books of the New Testament, Philemon, 2nd, 3rd, John, and Jude. And we'll just do those every 2 weeks.
Short and sweet.
We'll do it. We'll get through 4 books of the Bible over 1 quarter. And they said, man, that'd be great. So we did that. And then they said, can we do this again over the summer? So we said, okay, let's do Philippians. So we did the book of Philippians over the summer. And then they said, can we keep going? I said, okay, let's do James in the fall. We just finished up the book of James this fall. And now we're getting ready to jump into First Timothy.
Yeah. So you said that they already knew you though through some discipleship things. Like how did you even begin to connect with the college students in your church?
Well, part of it was really just God. I mean, ultimately, because our ministry at West Point, we spent from 2018 to 2022, my wife and I spent 2.5 years. We spent more time at West Point than we did at Cal Poly.
Is that right?
And so here I am, a colonel in the Army, but I've got we live on post and I'm teaching, but the students want to be involved in your life, which is interesting. They said, can we come over for dinner? So we got to where my wife and I felt like this is how God really has equipped us. The students want to come over and they want to have dinner and just want to feel like, I want to be part of your life. So we do the same thing. We took that little experience over there of having students come over, for them, they could walk over because it was only like, half a
Amazing.
mile to a mile from where they were at. But here they have to drive, but they still will say, we want to come over and have dinner. And so sometimes we've had students invite themselves for dinner or bring friends to dinner
Of course.
when we invite them. And we live 20 or so minutes from campus.
Yeah, it's not
And
real
so
close.
it's not really close, but they'll do it. But what we did is we were going to a church here in our town, which is not near. Since we felt like our ministry, God was leading us into a campus student-centric type of ministry, we said, well, I can't do it here without, let's try to find a place where students are. So we changed churches and started going to the church in San Luis Obispo where was plenty of students. And so we tied in with the college student ministry, and we have got involved and made ourselves known to the college pastor. And he would start pointing students at me and say, this guy wants to be discipled. Would you disciple him? And so, consequently, we've got to know a lot of students, and we'll have at the beginning and the end of the year, we'll have a barbecue at our house where we just invite as many students as we can and want to come over and just have
Really?
burgers, dogs, and fellowship.
Wow. Can you tell us about like one of the students who was really encouraged by being a part of a group like this and having you pour into him or her?
Well, I've got
Any
a
success
student.
stories?
Well, I've got one student now who, most of the opportunities I get are not things I pursue. I have students just come up and ask me, "Can you give a talk on prayer? Can you talk at Epic Group?" Or so about a year ago, I was asked to speak to the Epic Group on anything that they felt like God was talking to me about. And so I prayed about it for a while, and I went to the Epic Group and was praying about what should I talk about. And so afterwards, this one student, came up and started talking with me. I was talking a lot about fruitfulness, and how God has wants us to be fruitful. And as I was talking with him, I started feeling like God saying, why don't you ask him if he'd like to meet? So I said, would you like to just start meeting and just get together a little bit? He said, I've been wanting somebody to mentor me, and I wasn't going to ask you, but that would be exactly what I need.
Really?
So we started talking with him, and it turns out he's a really, really kind of a new believer. It's fun working with new believers because they just are excited about walking with the Lord. They get excited about small things. Just getting, God, talk to me about this.
And that energy is contagious.
It is
The
contagious.
student's
So
energy.
I've been meeting with him, going through a navigator study on, how to just follow up with a person, and what does it mean to walk in obedience to Christ. And so we meet regularly. I'm meeting with him later on today. We go to a coffee shop, and then we talk about the book or whatever's going on in his life. And he said, I'm graduating now, but can we continue to do this even if I leave? Can I still, keep in touch with you? It's like, yeah. So, but I really, and
That's so encouraging.
he's actually, he's another student we worked with are going on a mission trip to El Salvador with the Campus Crusade Ministries here, go on a short-term mission over the spring break. And he's going. My wife and I went a couple years ago. I really wanted to go, but we have a grandchild being born in about 2 weeks, so it doesn't really work out. But there'll be more opportunities.
Congratulations for that.
Yeah. So, but we're excited about that. But I so wanted to go because it's like, I want to go down there and be with you guys while you guys are, but it just, the door was kind of closed. I asked a couple people here if I could go ahead. Hey, no, I just, this too, no, can't. So,
Can't do everything then.
but
It's encouraging though to hear your heart for them.
yeah. So I'm excited to see, this is a new Christian. And his desire is to reach out. He said, I just felt like God wants me to reach out to people and be involved in this. I was like, yes, he's catching the vision. Go out there
Yes.
go out there and be Jesus, bring the light of Christ to the world. And I'm just excited that this guy has a heart for, just, wants to reach out and do that. So I just feel really grateful that God's brought these people into my life and said, you don't really have that much to offer. What you do have to, you know, be, to spend time with them. And I think that's, for me, that's been, really encouraging. And Alexandra, I'm retiring here people ask me, are you going to miss teaching? I was like, no, I'm not. What are you going to do? I said, I don't know. The things that I don't have to be a faculty, I don't have to be a faculty member to be involved with students' life. This doesn't mean I'm not going to go out and be involved and not going to be involved with faculty life. I have I have basically two ministries. I have a ministry to faculty and a ministry to students. I'm going to continue to do
Mhm.
both. I don't have to be a faculty member to do it. It brings me a lot more joy. I've I've been really, really excited about just looking forward to continuing ministry to faculty on campus. I love the relationships I've developed with the faculty here, and it would be such a
Mm.
shame not to continue to be involved in their lives. And in fact,
How
one of
will
the
you be
non
able to do that after you retire?
could easily, I don't have to, I can still talk to them. I can still, I
Come
still
back to
have access.
campus.
I have a parking permit. If I want, I could probably get an office as an emeritus faculty.
Is that
Uh,
right? That'd be
yeah.
fun.
Anyway, but like I said, I really enjoy just meeting with faculty and encouraging them and continuing to lead G3 groups. And I love the faculty ministry. So I'm going to
What is a
continue.
G3 group for our
Well,
listeners that don't know?
a G3 group is group of three. So where two or three have gathered together at my name, I am there in their midst. So I think it's based on that. It's sometimes hard to get group any more than three or so faculty together because of divergent schedules and things like that. Faculty are just busy. So the G3 groups are faculty fellowship groups where we get together and pray for one another and talk about a topic of spiritual interest, so that we have a prompt with devotional thoughts on it. And we read through that and we talk about how God has been at work in our lives. We pray for one another, encourage one another. And for me, I enjoy that a great deal. I would really be sad if I couldn't continue to do that. And I'll continue to do student ministry because I still love to hang out with the students. And I have some other men around church that I find time to encourage. And I find that actually the more that I try to encourage people, the more encouraged I get from them.
Yeah,
I I don't know. I don't really know if I have that much to bring, but boy, they bring a lot to me. So I've been really
that's
blessed by
great.
that.
I know
Yeah.
what you mean. Well, so this has been so rich, and I want to ask you some lightning round questions. First, could could you give like advice to other Christian professors who may be wondering, how do I take a next step of faith? How do I be a little more bold in my faith on campus?
I would say just invite somebody out so invite a colleague out to have coffee. Most people will do that. I've even had things like this. I've even ministered to janitorial staff on just interruptions, because I'll talk to pretty much anybody who will talk to me, but occasionally a janitor will come in and empty the trash. And I'll thank them, and I'll also, ask them their name. And after a while, I noticed one time, this one janitor, her countenance was just different. She's not the same. I said, what's going on? And, she said, well, so-and-so died over there. He's a good friend, and so-and-so died. I said, oh, that's tragic. I said, can I pray for you? And I've had students come into my office and they're sullen or sad. Something's not right. And then I'll say, look, can I pray for you? And they'll say, sure. And I say, can we pray now? It's like,
That's another thing. Yeah, that's
that's
another step.
another level. But, because they might say, oh, yeah, sure, pray for me. Oh, you want to pray now? And just that little invitation. I have not had anybody turn me down on that. Very simple thing, office hours. I think that being willing to be interrupted, I think of Jesus and how many wonderful opportunities he had. I think some of his richest interactions with people came about by being interrupted. Jesus was okay with being interrupted. What I'm thinking of specifically at this point, that's the only one I can think of at the time, is the woman who had been bleeding for 12 years, and it says she suffered greatly at the hands of doctors. She was saying, if I just touch his cloak, I'll be better. That is so much faith. So, there's all these people around the crowd, and this woman, Jesus, she touched me. It's like, Jesus, come on, man. What are you talking about? There's hundreds of people around you. No, somebody touched me. And then the woman, he stopped everything for this woman who touched him. He stopped everything. Said, oh, she confessed and said, your faith has made you well. And it was like, what a wonderful thing. He didn't let himself be interrupted. And, so often interruptions can be opportunities for us to do that. So I think for me, not allowing the busyness of my perceived busyness to get in the way of what God might want to do with an interruption.
Love it.
So
That's great advice.
yeah, so those types of things.
What about your advice for any student who is struggling with doubts about God? Can you give that student any advice?
Well, I think that um God reaches out to us. It's not really the work that we do. It's what God does in spite of us. God's not asking us to be perfect. Surely, I was thinking about this morning about how God really is a father. I was reading in Psalm 68, so God is a father to the fatherless. And we don't really think of God as having that type. We kind of think it maybe he's not concerned about what's going on in my life. The very fact of the matter is that God is intimately concerned. And I think of the prodigal son who said, he's gone. And it says when he was a long way off, he saw him and run. The only way he could have saw him, he must have been looking for him every day. He's out there wondering if he can come back. The father was always looking. You don't have to teach a father. You shouldn't. Well, you shouldn't have to. I mean, I guess it doesn't always happen. You shouldn't have to. A good father, you wouldn't have to teach them to love their children. And even if we have had bad fathers or bad examples, we still know in our heart of hearts that that's not the way a father should be. And there is a father who is always concerned about what's going on. He cares deeply about the things that are going on in our life, and he's always reaching out. He's always, like I didn't, for my own self, my own experience, I didn't look for God. God didn't. I had doubts. Could God possibly love me? I mean, look at all the bad stuff I've done. He cares about us. Why? I don't know. It's too wonderful for me to understand.
Me too.
The fact of the matter is he does. He cares. He loves us deeply. No other God does that. So, how can we doubt the love of God? Paul says, if he gave his son for us. He gave his son. Even when we were sinners, if God's willing to do that when we didn't merit it, man, he's gonna do what he says. He's gonna forgive us. He's gonna deal with us as a father does his own children. I think it's just amazing that this God cares about us so deeply that he'll hunt us down. He'll follow us even if you're not pursuing him. So most of my life has been, I didn't look for any of the opportunities I wound up with. I didn't look for my opportunity at West Point. I didn't look for my opportunity to do research with the Army. Cal Poly was not my first choice. I wanted to go to a research institution, but I felt like God was calling me here. And my wife agreed. And I said, okay, if I can do the type of research I want to do and attract funding at Cal Poly, which is an undergraduate primarily institution, then I'm going to stay here. And within 3 years, I had to stop. After 5 years, I had to stop writing grants because I had so much money coming in that I couldn't. I don't know. I can't understand.
I've never heard of that problem.
It's an unusual problem. And it's not because I'm so good at it, because I'm really not. But it was because God wanted to show me that this is where he had to do this because otherwise I wouldn't have stayed here. He says, I got to give Lanny some money because if I don't, then I want him there. And if I don't give him this, then he'll walk away and he'll be too stupid to figure out that I want him to stay here.
I'm certainly thankful that he kept you there. When I hear about your relationship with these students and the faculty, that sounds just like God.
It's taken a long time to actually get to that point because for many years I didn't really have that, but it's actually has brought, actually, and like I say, most of it came about because I was actually, I'm an Army officer, but instead of getting deployed to go to Afghanistan, I actually did get called to go to Iraq for a year and a half. I didn't go because I had back surgery. God didn't, but my deployments from that point forward were being deployed to West Point.
Is that right?
It's like, okay, hardship tour. But, over the years, God used that experience to really develop and changed my heart towards both faculty and students, and they helped me to realize.
Yeah.
And I kind of needed that. I kind of needed to get outside myself. I think getting outside of myself is being brought out of a place where I thought I have control. I've come to realize I have almost zero control over how my career has gone. It just happened. It wasn't the way that I planned, but God brought me where He wanted me to go. I think, oh, it's pretty wonderful.
Yeah. Well, Lanny, so the last question I have for you is what do you think might be the next step of faith God would have you take?
Well, as a retiring faculty, the big thing is to say, I've got a lot of unstructured time. And so I think a lot of what happens that's really in terms of goodness is going to have to do with what do I do with my unstructured time? How well do I manage and steward that unstructured time? So I'm trying to figure out ways in which I can count for Him. I'm going to have to be accountable to my wife to make sure that I am really being a good steward of that. There's opportunities that have come about to maybe go overseas and speak at college campuses over time. I had to turn one down this year to talk at a university in Mexico, but there'll be other opportunities for that. So I'm looking forward to say, you know, what what are, what does God want me to do? I'm just trying to keep my ears and my eyes open to do what He wants me to do, to take His invitation. Say, this is the way, walk in it. Honestly, a friend of mine put it this way. He says, you know what, Lenny, God's more interested in you and telling you what He wants you to do than you are in finding out about it.
That helps take the pressure off of me to
He says,
think of it
God
that way.
wants to show you what to do. You're so, just so I think it's really important that I just say, okay, God, what do you really want me to do? And He says, he's more excited to tell you what His will is than we are finding out about it. Because sometimes we say, if that's what you really want me to do, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know the answer to this question, but I know that you've been involved in some leadership with Faculty Commons out there in California.
Yeah.
Are there some opportunities you know of to, as you retire, to serve more in an official capacity with Faculty Commons?
I would very much be open to that. I'm not ruling anything out. If this is what God leads, I'm certainly happy. I've even toyed with the idea of going to seminary. Uh, but I don't know. We just have to wait and see what God points out. But what I don't want to do is shut off opportunities. Say, no, I can't do that. I mean, I'm kind of like can be old. I don't want to be old.
Yeah, yeah.
So my other pastor used to say, if you're not dead, you're not done. So I just want to make sure that I'm not, I just want to make sure I'm not cutting off opportunities that God may say, this is what I really want you to do. It's like, I can't do that. I'm too old. It's like, no, you can still do things like that. I mean, it's interesting. One of the things that was interesting was Enoch. Enoch was 62 years old when he actually started walking with God.
Mm,
And he said
mm.
after that, he walked with God for 365 years. But it happened, he said, okay, 362, God called him. He said, and he got to where God enjoyed walking with him so much. He says, hey, Enoch, it's been so great walking with you. You want to walk with me up here? And he said, yeah, it says the view's much better up here. So he says, I just took him away.
That's a good story.
I know, isn't it though? But God is like, I think I just want to try to figure out, because I'm about Enoch's age. So I want to try to say, okay, well, maybe I can start trying to walk with God more and enjoy just being with Him for the sake of just walking. I mean, that's a fun thing to do. Is just let's go walking together. I've even done that with
Mm.
faculty. Just at lunchtime, let's go walking. That's another opportunity. You can just simple things, relational things. But if we just do those types of things, I think God will use us as long as He's going to guide us. He's going to teach us what he wants us to do. It's just simple things. If we're just willing to listen and say, okay, I can do that. Yeah.
Well, Lanny, thank you so much. I feel really grateful and honored to be getting to know you in this season of your life. And I would very much like to be a part of watching and seeing and supporting you in this next season as you retire. It sounds like that you have setting yourself up well for God to walk you into a new season. So thank you. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or say?
Just try to find ways to enjoy the Lord. I mean, it seems to get a little better every year, every day. Yeah. So I'm starting to enjoy the excitement of what's next.
For our audience, thank you so much for joining us. And remember, you can read even more about Lanny on meettheprof.com and search for him by name, Lanny Griffin. And please remember to subscribe or like where you're watching or listening. And thanks again. We hope until next time, this helps encourage you to have a Christ-centered conversation on your college campus.